Star Trek's lore is so extensive at this point that it's easy for certain plot points to not get the attention they deserve. Important moments in characters' lives, huge mistakes made by Starfleet crews, and mysterious new technologies can often get no more than a quick reflection, and sometimes get completely forgotten by the end of the episode. Starfleet literally discovered that all humanoid life in the Milky Way shares a common ancestor, and never discussed it on screen again. And that's only one example of their tendency to lose sight of the big picture through all their encounters with omnipotent alien entities and physics-defying space anomalies. But sometimes these moments can come up again when you least expect them, and go on to have profound effects on the future of Trek. So, with that in mind then, I'm Ellie with Trek Culture, here with 10 Star Trek moments more important than you realised. Number 10. The ethical logic programming of Starfleet computers. During the Battle of the Binary Stars in the Discovery episode of the same name, we learned something very cool about Starfleet's computers: ethical logic programming. After being confined to the brig, Michael Burnham watched as the area surrounding her cell was blasted away by Klingons and exposed to the vacuum of space. Knowing that her life was in severe danger, Burnham was able to convince the computer to help her escape the brig, despite being classified as a criminal. This exposes something very interesting. Starfleet's computers can apparently be made to disobey direct commands from the crew if those commands put someone's life in danger. Burnham would surely die if left in the cell, and since Federation law prevents the unlawful execution of prisoners without a trial, it had no ethical option but to help her. It's unlikely that something like this could be possible unless the prisoner was almost guaranteed to die otherwise. This small scene was a great nod to the Federation's sympathetic philosophy toward prisoners. Number 9. The Protostar's Vehicle Replicator. One of the coolest new Starfleet technologies we saw in Star Trek Prodigy was the Protostar's Vehicle Replicator. Ever since replicators were introduced, Trek fans have wondered if the technology could ever be scaled up to create things larger than food, weapons, and components. The Prodigy episode Starstruck finally confirmed that these larger-scale replicators do exist. The Protostar's Vehicle Replicator was able to create entire shuttles and land vehicles like the runaway seen in the episode Dreamcatcher. This has huge implications for the future of Starfleet tech. One can imagine entire fleets of small spacecrafts being produced by a single one of these devices, the only limiting factor being how much energy you can feed into it. Industrial replicators were mentioned a few times in the franchise's history, though these were likely an early form of the tech we saw in Prodigy. It does seem weird that it took so many decades to scale up an already existing technology, but we know from Prodigy that it takes a significant amount of power to run, so maybe the Protostar drive needed to be invented first. Number 8. The Doctor going beyond his programming. One of the most interesting story arcs throughout Voyager was the Doctor's journey towards becoming sentient. The Mark I emergency medical holograms were a new Starfleet technology designed to help the medical staff aboard a ship. But when Voyager's entire medical staff was wiped out in the pilot, the Doctor was the only one trained in advanced medicine and was forced to stay online much longer than his programmers intended. Because he was online for so long, he started forming complex relationships with the crew and expanding his own program to include knowledge on things he was interested in, like opera and writing. At the beginning of Voyager, he was treated like a simple machine by most of the crew, but they slowly accepted him as an individual. When the Doctor's rights were called into legal question in the episode Author, Janeway assembled the crew to defend him and proved that he is in fact self-aware. One of the most compelling arguments was that the Doctor had actually disobeyed orders in the past in the episode Flesh and Blood. His programming explicitly prohibited this, which proved for a fact that he had become more than just a program. He could make decisions for himself. Number 7. Spock's mind meld with Nomad. The Vulcan mind meld is a powerful ability that, among other things, allows them to share their deepest thoughts and memories with other sentient beings. The practice was frowned upon in early Vulcan history, but by the time of the original series, Vulcans like Spock used mind melds often when no other options were available. One of Spock's most interesting mind melds was with the robotic space probe Nomad in the episode The Changeling. Seeing that Nomad, a lost Earth probe from the early 2000s, had mutated and turned into a seemingly intelligent being, Spock suggested a mind meld and was able to peer into the machine's thoughts, proving for a fact that it was self-aware. Using the meld, Spock was able to learn Nomad's intentions to destroy all life in the universe and the origin of its self-awareness. This was the first time we saw a mind meld with an artificial intelligence, but not the last. In Star Trek The Motion Picture, Spock did the same thing with the V'Ger entity and once again shared thoughts with a sentient machine. Number 6. Data and Tasha Yar's brief romance. Data had a number of important steps on his quest to become more human over the course of The Next Generation. One thing that was very important for him in this regard was exploring his sexuality. When the entire crew was suffering from the intoxication virus in the Naked Now, Data was somehow also affected, which led to him and Tasha Yar sleeping together. As far as we've seen on screen, this was Data's first time being intimate with someone. It was revealed during one of the court scenes in The Measure of a Man that Data actually kept a hologram of Tasha after her death and greatly appreciated her for helping him explore this part of himself. Even though it was all because of a weird space virus and Tasha asked him to keep it a secret, this was still one of the formative moments in Data's quest to be human. After all, according to Data, Dr. Soong designed him to be fully functional and programmed in many techniques, whatever that means. So clearly, this was something that was always a possibility for Data, though it likely took the influence of the intoxication virus to get him to want to experiment. Number 5. Borg spatial trajector technology. In the episode The Impossible Box from Star Trek Picard's first season, Picard and Soji escaped the Romulan-captured Borg cube, the artifact, by using a device known as a spatial trajector inside of the ship's Queen cell. It was described as a kind of transporter used for the Queen in the event of an emergency, with a theoretical range of 40,000 light-years. This is frankly ridiculous, since the Milky Way galaxy is only about 100,000 light-years across. This transporter should be able to send someone halfway across the galaxy in an instant. Long gone are the days when you needed a wormhole to reach the Gamma Quadrant. Interestingly, many fans might not have noticed that in The Impossible Box, the spatial trajector technology was actually said to have been assimilated from the Sicarians, a species that Voyager encountered in the episode Prime Factors. Voyager eventually found that the Sicarians were unwilling to share their spatial trajector technology, and it wasn't even compatible with Starfleet ships anyways. But apparently the Borg had an easier time integrating it. It should be noted that the Borg only use this for immediate emergencies, so it's likely that the tech is a huge power drain. Number 4. Anthony from Lower Decks. In the Lower Decks episode Much Ado About Boimler, a transporter accident left Ensign Boimler feeling pretty blue. In an effort to cure him, he was brought aboard the Osler, a ship transporting various medical mystery patients to the Farm, a faraway colony where they could be taken care of and treated by the best doctors available. The other patients aboard the Osler included a guy whose body was equal parts accelerated growth and reversed aging, a giant disembodied head, and someone in the same robotic life support system as Captain Pike's, another victim of that pesky Delta radiation. But the most interesting patient was Anthony. The other patients believed that Anthony used to be a male human, which, mixed with his appearance, pretty much confirmed that he'd suffered the same fate as Tom Paris and Catherine Janeway in the Voyager episode Threshold. In one of the most bizarre and canon-breaking episodes of the series, the two had their evolution accelerated by going beyond Warp 10. Anthony's presence aboard the Osler actually means that either someone else broke the Warp 10 barrier and suffered the same fate, or somehow someone found Paris and Janeway's kids that they abandoned in the Delta Quadrant. Let's hope it's the latter, because honestly guys, that's not cool. Number 3. The biomimetic copy of Voyager. In the Voyager episode Demon, the crew encountered biomimetic lifeforms called Silverblood on an uninhabitable Demon-class planet. These unique aliens have the ability to create copies of anything they make contact with. In the episode, Tom Paris and Harry Kim were duplicated, then later, in order to escape the planet, Janeway allowed them to recreate the whole crew and left them to start a society on the Demon planet. For a long time, the fate of the duplicate crew was unknown, but after 18 episodes, Course Oblivion gave us the answers we were looking for. Apparently, the entire ship was duplicated, and eventually the other crew forgot that they were copies and left the planet, setting course for Earth. Unfortunately, the Silverblood is only able to survive on Demon-class planets, so, as time went on, the duplicate crew slowly began to die and revert back to their liquid state. After finally realizing their true identities, the duplicate crew tried desperately to find another Demon-class planet to settle, but unable to find one in time, they all died, and the ship was destroyed shortly before reaching the real Voyager in an attempt to send them a time capsule of their lives. Some fans even theorize that some of the episodes we've seen are actually from the perspective of the duplicate crew, though this has never been confirmed. Number 2. The destroyed Borg sphere from First Contact. In Star Trek First Contact, after the Borg failed their initial attempt to assimilate humanity, they launched a sphere which travelled to the 21st century to attack Earth in the past before the warp drive was invented. The Enterprise followed the sphere into the past and quickly destroyed it with a barrage of quantum torpedoes, but apparently that wasn't enough, as we learned years later in the Star Trek Enterprise episode Regeneration that part of the sphere survived the explosion and ended up crashing in the Arctic, where it remained until it was discovered by a research team in 2153. The surviving drones were able to escape from Earth by assimilating the research team and stealing a transport ship. The Enterprise NX-01 intercepted them and destroyed the ship, but not before they were able to send the collective a subspace message including the location of Earth. So although the Borg were never identified by name and only a few lives were lost, the timeline was at least slightly changed by the events of First Contact. We even saw later in the episode that Zefram Cochrane spoke offhandedly about some humans and cybernetic aliens from the future during a speech at a university. All of this could have been prevented if the Enterprise E was just a bit more thorough when destroying the sphere. Number 1. The origin of the name 10 Forward. For years, it was assumed that Guinan's bar on the Enterprise D, 10 Forward, got its name from being located at the forward section of the ship's 10th deck. However, Star Trek Picard threw this all into question. At the start of Season 2, Picard visited Guinan on Earth at her new bar, hilariously located at 10 Forward Avenue, Los Angeles. At first, when the bar appeared in the show, fans thought it was simply a fun reference to Guinan's bar on the Enterprise. But this was all changed when Picard visited the bar again later in the season in the year 2024. The fact that 10 Forward Avenue was the address of Guinan's bar centuries before she ever came aboard the Enterprise heavily implies that Guinan specifically requested her bar on the ship to be located at the forward section of Deck 10 as a reference to her old bar on Earth, which is basically the exact opposite of what we assumed. This seems unlikely as the room in this area looks intentionally designed to be a social space, so many fans even theorize that her time-sensing powers as an Elorian subconsciously let her know of this beforehand, which is why she chose to set up a bar at that address in the past. To be honest though, it was probably just a mistake by the writers. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed any, then do let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to hit that like button. But we've also noticed that we are at 220,000 subscribers here on YouTube, and I reckon we can get that to 250,000 by the winter. So if you haven't already, then make sure that you have subscribed and turn on notifications so you never miss a Trek Culture video again. Also, head over to Twitter and follow us there at Trek Culture, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with Trek Culture. I hope you have a wonderful day, and remember to boldly go where no one has gone before.